right, I am on with Joe from Egypt. Can I call you Joe or should I call you the last pharaoh?
Yeah, Joe's fine. Joe's fine.
Joe is fine.
Last pharaoh would be like a bit awkward, so yeah. Joe.
All right, so for people that don't know you, you're the only person we selected out of the 20 people that I actually do know of because I follow you on Twitter, and you are a YouTuber by the name of The Last Pharaoh, and you do really some great videos talking about atheism and secularism and being an ex-Muslim and the regressive left, all of this stuff. But before we get into that, tell me, you're 31 in Egypt. How is life in Egypt these days?
Well, it's kind of okay. I mean, look, when people ask me that question, I always like to think, like, to give myself some hope, to say at least I'm not living in Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia or something.
So you're an optimist.
Yeah, just to be able to, to function. And actually, like, on a day-to-day basis, I really don't feel like that much of, it's just like for other people are getting it like bad. But for me, maybe because I just have like thick skin or something, I don't know. I'm not really feeling that affected. So, yeah.
So we don't have to go too much into the politics because I want to really focus on what you're doing. But, it was only, 3-4 years ago that the Arab Spring happened, and you guys lived under Mubarak, who was basically a military dictator for 30-something years. You had the Muslim Brotherhood by democratic elections for a year. Then they get overthrown by the military again, and that's where you're at now. So do people there, how do they feel just about the whole system? Is there a feeling that democracy is ever going to come back? Do they want democracy to come back? Because it didn't really work for that year. Like, what's the feeling there?
Well, you have to like differentiate between like two like classes of people. So you have like the majority of Egyptians, like the normal, everyday like kind of people. I would say they're like, I don't know, they're not happy right now as they should, but they're like kind of okay with it, like with the current like government. They were not happy during the Muslim Brotherhood, even less happy than they were under Mubarak. So that was not gonna work at all. The whole thing.
Yeah.
So, but the political class in Egypt, which I happen to think that like 90% of them are idiots, but yeah, they're not happy with anything. Which I think is like, they have like this like kind of like regressive SJW kind of a thing happening like all the time, and they're not focusing on what's important. So they just make big deals about nothing, while not talking about really people going to jail for just saying like normal, like just stupid shit. People say, people are going to jail for making jokes about filling like balloon condoms with air and handing them out, so they just send them to prison. Some people just went to prison because they do like sketch comedy on YouTube or something. They sent them to prison. So I think the most important thing that needs to change in Egypt, not the regime, not the economy, and they're just doing what they can. I mean, the government, they have an interest to just do as best as they can. What I really think is important is the whole free speech, and like the blasphemy law, the modesty laws. These kind of laws need to go because the Constitution actually doesn't allow it.
Yeah.
So some people should just focus on that, raising the money, getting those like laws in front of the parliament or in front of even the constitutional court. Because the Egyptian constitution, if you read it and forget it's from Egypt, you really wouldn't know that it's from Egypt, because it's like 99.9% secular. Like really, freedom of speech like has its own article that's like totally guaranteed, no restrictions, no limitations under any circumstances. So the fact that we have laws punishing people because they insulted this guy or the president or like some, I don't know, anyone, it's unconstitutional. It's like 100% unconstitutional.
Yeah, so with all that in mind, I mean, where do you get the balls to do what you do? You're showing me your face right now. I asked you before we started recording if it was okay, if we wanted to do something different or whatever, wear a mask or whatever. But I mean, you put your videos out there with your voice. You're incredibly brave and clear and honest. I mean,
I don't see it that way, actually.
Okay.
I don't see it like that. I just see it like, I said that before to a lot of people. I'm not doing the videos anonymously to hide. I just like my, my privacy kind of. I don't like putting my face on camera all the time.
Yeah.
But even if I was living in America or something, I would still do the videos anonymously. people seem to miss that point. I said that all the time. I'm not hiding. I just don't like putting my face on camera. I just don't like seeing myself on camera. So that's it. I'm not. And to me, it's like, I don't know. It's like I'm tired. I'm like 31, but I feel like I'm 60. I'm tired. I'm not gonna hide. I'm not gonna censor myself anymore. It's just like people seem to forget that on a day-to-day basis, I have to pretend to be someone else, like to everyone around me.
Yeah.
So I just, even when I'm getting a haircut, I have to like agree with the guy who's cutting my hair that the weather, we have like a particularly hot summer these days, that the weather is like Allah's thing, and you know, we have to be thankful because some people got it worse. So I have to agree with that, like every single minute of every single day. So I'm not gonna censor myself online. That's like not
Right.
gonna happen.
So wait, you have to thank Allah that it's really hot, but not hotter than really hot.
Yeah. So basically, the idea in every Muslim country is you have to be thankful because you're not like the worst thing on earth. So as long as like there's one guy that's worse than you, you have to be thankful.
Oh, all
So
right.
you find that guy, and that guy should like have a problem with God, seriously.
It can always
worst
get
guy.
it can always get worse. I get it. All right. So wait, I want to talk a little bit about your personal stuff. So you are an atheist and you consider yourself an ex-Muslim, correct?
Yeah. of course, yeah.
So you put these videos out there, and you have a real fan base. It's awesome. What about in your own personal life? There, like, are you out to your friends and family? Like, how much can you talk about that stuff?
Well, look, my friends and family, like, they know I'm not like religious. That's like what they know, and they know that I'm kind of like, you know, I just don't care about any of that stuff. They know that, but they don't know that I'm like 100% atheist. Actually, the idea wouldn't even enter their minds. Even if I told them, they would be like, you know, they're not, their mind wouldn't like, because the option is not on the table here in like Egypt or in the Muslim countries. It's not an option to be an atheist. You know?
Yeah.
No one knew that. No one told me that. So if someone would have told me that when I was like 6 years old, because I always wasn't like compliant with religion. So if someone would have told me that, like when I was young, the idea might have like, I might have like made the switch a long time ago, but the idea wasn't even there.
So when did you make that switch? When did you wake up?
I think it was like about 3 years ago. I had some like, you know, like I had like a major event happened in my life. So I had to stop because I was just going and I wasn't like really paying attention, but I never really was a Muslim. If you really like consider like how I was living, I never really was. I just didn't even stop to think, you know what, maybe this is all bullshit. I never stopped to say that to myself. But when my life just stopped me, like forcefully stopped, I had some time to like reflect and think and just reach a conclusion that was just like right there, but I never really even considered it.
Yeah, and did you jump on YouTube right after that? Because the stuff that you do there is really great, and we'll put a link below so everyone can find you.
Is it so? Is it though? Is it great? I don't think
it is.
A lot of, yeah, but I think you're brave for having me. Actually,
I'm brave.
Yeah.
I think you have it backwards.
No, because like my videos are not really like advertiser friendly or something. They don't really.
Whatever.
I don't really follow like the whole like, yeah. So yeah. No, what actually made me jump on YouTube was, I know it's like a cliche at this point, but actually it was the Sam Harris Ben Affleck thing.
I mean,
It was like,
that was my awakening too. So we're across the world.
yeah, it was like, no. Someone needs to have this guy's back because he's like taking all the heat for saying something that's so obvious, and it's like ridiculous what people, and actually not just the interview. The next day on CNN and all that was like a shit show. That was like, are people? Can I say that?
You could say it. Go crazy. You could say more than that.
It was a fucking shit show. So yeah, I had to like say something. I actually uploaded 2 videos and deleted them. But then I uploaded a third one because I wasn't really sure about the whole thing. It was like, okay, if I get like 100 views on that, okay, I'll do a second one. And it just, it kept going from there.
Think how awesome that is, really. I mean, we live something like, I don't know, 8,000 miles away from each other. And that moment, that same night, I mean, that was my awakening. I had a little crack in my awakening before that. But we had that together. That is so cool. So I'm thrilled to be talking to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
You're a good host too. All right, so we only have like another minute, but I'll do something else with you in the future. But just talk to me a little bit about the regressives, because you hate them as much as I do. This regressive ideology. So how does it affect you as a free thinker and a secularist and an atheist in Egypt? How does their ideology harm your ability to live the way you want?
Well, they're basically shutting down any conversation that could lead to anything, because when you're talking about like that. Yeah, that there's no such thing that Islam is just like any other religion, and like that they're ignoring like the majority of Muslims like they live outside of the U.S., the United States or the UK or whatever, that really are like living in horrible conditions. Don't look at me. I'm living like fantastically compared to other people. Even in Egypt, no one bothers me. I do whatever I want, but some people can't. And when you start saying things like that's like racist to just say that we should like keep an eye on some issues that are very important, and you should like, you're liberal. That's the problem too. You should, you should actually leave everything and just focus on that there are people getting murdered for being gay or for saying the wrong thing or for listening to the wrong kind of music, or you should do that. You should champion that cause, not just for people living outside the U.S., just live inside the U.S. and the world travel, because, the internet and all that. And don't even get me started on this nonsense about like feminism in Islam. This is a whole, we need like a whole other app.
You know what? Here's what we're gonna do. For real, I'm gonna do an hour with you, because this is just the beginning, and I truly am a fan of yours. So we're gonna do a full hour together. So I'm sorry we had to cut it short. And you know what? I think I told you this, but I was in Egypt back in 1997. It feels like a lifetime ago. And I would love to go back at some point, so maybe we can work that too.
Just call me up. I'll be like your tour guide. I'm going to show you like the pyramids, all the cliches and other stuff too.
All right, I am on with Kushal from India. Kushal, you are #1. You are first on the Big Rubin Report fan show. How's it going in India today?
Namaste, Dave.
Namaste.
So I'm really happy that you have me over. India is good. It's really hot right now, actually.
Yeah, what's really hot for you guys?
We deal in Celsius, not Fahrenheit. So it's actually right now it's 35 degrees Celsius with a humidity of 77%. That's pretty hot.
Oh man, are you in air conditioning right now, or you just have a series of fans? Air conditioning.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right, well, I'm super excited to talk to you. Now, I don't know, we got a lot of responses. I don't know that all 1.2 billion with a B people in India responded, but we did get a ton of responses from India, about 100 people. So you're the lucky one out of 100. So there was a lot of things that you sent me that I thought were really, really interesting. So first off, and a few people in India talked about this, you mentioned just the general state of freedom of expression in India right now. So can you tell me a little bit about your concerns about the state of freedom of expression?
So here's the thing. I don't want to paint a very dangerous scenario or something of that sort. But as a skeptic, I'm a skeptic myself. So in India we have some weird laws. So I'll give you an example of a couple of situations. So it all starts with a particular constitutional article called 295A. Mm-hmm. So basically that article restricts any criticism of religion. So I'm not going to give the whole text of the article to you, because that would just take away a lot of time. But
sure.
The article says that you cannot hurt the sentiments of religious people. And here's the funny part. So it's basically a blasphemy law. And India is a 80% Hindu country. And Hinduism does not even have a concept of blasphemy.
Right.
So, it's hilarious, actually. But the history of the law is that in 1926, I think it was in 1926, we had this publisher who published a book called the Rangila Rasul. So it's a word in Hindi. So the Rangila Rasul means Prophet Muhammad the Casanova, or the playboy. So it basically spoke about the marriages and the sex life of Prophet Muhammad. Now, obviously, Muslims did not like it at that time, and there was a lot of rioting. This is in 1926. Mm-hmm. So eventually, the publisher was murdered. And the Britishers, because they didn't want to deal with it, they just came up with this blasphemy law, and we're just stuck with it now till 2016.
Right.
And
So,
the worst
so
part
wait,
is-
hold on. So if Hinduism has no blasphemy, so it's really only being used one way. It really sort of has nothing to do with Hinduism, right?
Yeah, it's not. But the tragedy is that even Hindus have started using this law. That's the tragedy. See, I might be a skeptic, but I don't consider myself to be outside the Hindu pantheon because, we don't have that Abrahamic problem where, atheists are considered outside the Abrahamic pantheon. Hinduism had a very healthy tradition of atheism built in itself.
Yeah.
So it hurts me even more because I consider myself to be a Hindu and we have this law and nobody talks about it. I mean, there have been rationalists who had to leave India. I'll give you an example. There was a rationalist called Sanal. I don't know his second name, but I know his name, Sanal. So he basically went around in 2012 and he was talking about how certain miracles claimed by Christians were not real. So they used this law and they went down on him. And he had to leave India. He stays in Finland now. And that's really sad. Recently, there was a comedian, Kushal. He made fun of a Sikh guru. So the followers of that guru, they went after him. Again, he had to apologize. And I can give you examples of various religions. Obviously, I mean, the highest amount of offense is caused by a particular religion, which nobody talks about.
Right. I got a lot of emails about that. I think everyone knows which one you're talking about. So one of the things that you wrote that I thought was really interesting, you said you wanted to make the distinction between tolerance and mutual respect. And I really thought that was fascinating because here in America, at least, we talk about tolerance all the time. We have to tolerate everybody, but in a way that's not a very lofty thing. Mutual respect is. So can you explain that?
So basically, it's not something that I've come up with. It's a concept that was discussed and, basically it's a concept introduced by an Indian-American author called Rajiv Malhotra. He wrote a book called Being Different in 2011. So what he basically talks about is every time we have an interfaith dialogue, right? So you have these interfaith dialogues where everybody around the table says, oh, we tolerate all religions. So, Rajiv ji spoke about it in a very beautiful way. So, he went around asking people, so do you tolerate your spouse in your house? Do you tolerate someone when you're having dinner with them?
Right.
So I have just basically taken this concept, being a skeptic, now I'm taking it to the next level and I'm saying, okay, here I am, I'm a skeptic. I may not agree with some views of Hinduism. I may not agree with a lot of views of Islam or Christianity. But where mutual respect comes in is, I don't need to tolerate you. I need to respect you, and you need to give me that respect back in return. That's when you have a dialogue. Tolerance is, you're saying, you suck, but it's okay, I'll let you be.
Right, but I won't kill you, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's tolerance.
And this is, again, it stems from this exclusivist nature of Abrahamic religions. See, Hindus don't have this problem, and I'm being very honest here.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never faced a Hindu saying, I've never come across a Hindu who says, oh, I'll tolerate you. Hindus would be like, okay, you don't believe in God, you do your own thing. I'll do my own thing.
Right.
But with, it's not like one God, one book, one religion. It's not that.
So does that make the state of atheists in India much stronger, actually? Because I did get I would say probably half of the people that emailed us from India said they were atheists and didn't make it sound like they were hiding, per se. Obviously, you're doing this right now. So if Hinduism, which is 80% of the religion in India, is sort of tolerant of atheism, that's pretty fantastic, right?
Yeah, it is. See, I like to classify Indian atheism in three parts. So there are the Hindu atheists or the Hindu dharmic skeptics. I call myself a dharmic skeptic. So we are not sure about some claims of Hinduism. So I would say I'm skeptical to reincarnation. I'm skeptical to a few claims that the gurus make. But there are a lot of things in Hinduism that are beautiful. I mean, I personally like the theory of karma as a action and reaction. I think karma could be taken as an action and reaction. Mm-hmm. But then there's this new atheism in India. I call them the Marxist atheists. So basically, you have to understand the political scenario in India, and especially the media. You have the social sciences and the humanities departments. They keep churning out these Marxist atheists. So when you got a lot of emails, I wouldn't be surprised that you must have gotten a lot of emails of those Marxist atheists who will paint a very different picture about Hinduism to you. Mm-hmm. And then I have the third category, which is the wannabe atheists. So that person has not read anything. So they just probably saw a video of Richard Dawkins on YouTube. And they must have gone, okay, I like this. I'm
Right.
an atheist now. So
Right.
it's like that. So I have three categorizations of atheism in India. I
Yeah.
belong to the dharmic skeptic.
Yeah. Well, listen, I feel like we just started and you're my first person out of 20, but our time is up already. But I appreciate your support. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts. And I have got to make it out to India. So when I do, I'm going to look you up.
Yeah. When you come to Mumbai, dinner's on me.
Done and done. All right. I am here with Hannah in Texas in the good old US of A. Hannah, how are you?
I am amazing. How are you?
I'm doing well. Texas. It feels like Texas is like a whole other country in a way. What's going on in Texas?
Well, honestly, I think that we are better than North Carolina right now.
That's pretty good. That's pretty
the
good.
thing about, yeah, I mean, like we get a lot of a bad rap here, but at the same time, when you actually live here, it really depends on where you live. Like Texas is bigger than like France or something, right?
Yeah.
So I live close to Dallas. Not super close, but about an hour away from that. And the closer you are to these major cities, the better it is. But whenever you start getting out to the rural areas, it gets kind of hickish, but they're good people. Like it's always like well-intentioned, good old boys sort of thing going on. So
All right, I'll go with that. Well, your submission was really great because you gave me a lot to work with here. So first off, you are trans. Big deal, but you are trans.
Yes, and I put a little asterisk on that. I am somebody who's very anti-labels, and there's a reason for this. I'm not, again, the special snowflake stuff later, but I don't know what I'm agreeing to whenever I say, yes, I'm trans, right? I mean, like, how far does that go? That's always kind of the big question whenever you're saying, are you a trans man, trans woman, transsexual, transgender, cross? Where are the lines?
Yeah.
You know, what am I agreeing to if I say, yes, I am that? But in a colloquial, general understanding at the very basic level, yes. As long as
Right,
all
so
the back just kind of kept off to the side.
I think that's really interesting, and it's actually kind of freeing because you, as the person that identifies however you want to identify, you're making the point of saying, well, sometimes these labels are a little confusing or don't quite get it right or all that. And meanwhile, society is just obsessed with these labels, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been doing this for close to 9 years now. The thing with the internet is that you don't really know who is typing what. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, a lot of like the trans stuff that comes out and people doing that, it's probably people just trying on a persona or trying on an identity or something like that. Usually teenagers, and I think that we kind of take them a little bit more seriously than we should on a national like hysteria type level. But I don't necessarily see that there's much wrong with it, but just let it be what it is instead of making a big deal out of it if it's online. Like in-person stuff, like real tangible happenings, that gets a little bit more attention or should. But whenever it's just like people online typing or posting or whatever, it's like, it could be anybody, you know.
Are you telling me that Tumblr is not real life? Is that what you're telling me?
I know it'll blow your mind.
I can't believe it.
It's, wow. You know, you can be anything on the internet. Like an attack helicopter, that one's really popular now.
Is that a big one right now?
Yes. Identifying as an attack helicopter, it's great.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's back up a little bit. So for someone that's watching this right now, wherever they are in the world, that has never heard from a trans person, or the only trans person that they know of is Caitlyn Jenner, can you just tell me a little bit about growing up? When did you realize you were trans, etc.?
Yeah, this is always very difficult because everybody's going to have like a similar overarching narrative, but it's going to have its different details. I knew something was off as a child, which is one of those common narratives, but I grew up Southern Baptist, and being raised that way is very kind of closed off. Everybody that wasn't Southern Baptist was influenced by the devil. But we moved around a lot and all that sort of thing. And just, I don't know how to qualify myself. Like, we are kind of the only people, it seems nowadays, where you have to explain yourself, rationalize to me why I should accept that you are who you say you are.
Right. You guys are the ones of the moment, but you know what? That won't last forever for whatever that's worth.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's one of those deals where it's like, I wish I could give a definitive answer. Like, this is exactly how I know. I can point to these scientific studies. This is exactly what happened. I can't. We're not there yet. Mm-hmm. What I can point to is that trans people have existed throughout history in multiple cultures. This is not a new thing. It is only new to the American West. And what I mean by that is the modern American West. Native tribes had different allowances for different genders and gender roles.
Sure.
So it's only new to, the North American West. And I think that kind of goes back to like Puritan European influence and whatnot, kind of scrounging all deviancy away from the possibility of human experience. And I'm sure that there were people back then, white European colonials or whatever, that were also trans but could not say anything for risk of being hung or killed or whatever. So
yeah, I'm curious. How much of your sort of just mental energy and ability to be a functioning person is about just having to explain yourself? Because that seems more exhausting in a way than dealing with something personal.
It is exhausting, and it was exhausting. I think a lot of trans people go through very similar phases in their transition. When I first started, I was a helper. I was going to be there for my trans sisters who were just starting also. I spent a lot of nights sleepless trying to keep people from killing themselves, but also trying to educate and explain and all this sort of thing. And as time went on and I got more passing privilege, as we call it, I didn't have as many people stopping me and asking me. And I kind of developed sort of a passive routine of like, this is how I'm just going to interact with people and just be super kind, super sweet and all that sort of thing. And there is that pressure that you always have to be on your A game as a trans woman around the normal people or whatever, right? And there's two camps on this. There's the radical queers who are like, we should not be trying to fit in. We are unique in our own way, and it's beautiful, and all this sort of thing. And then there's the people who are like, well, no, I kind of just want to fit in, and it's difficult trying to navigate this because it's very politicized. If you choose one side or the other, or you try to not pick a side, nobody's going to like you, and you end up in your room all alone all the time.
Well, is that one of the hardest things about sort of being not only being a minority in this regard, but like, as I said, trans issues seem to be the minority of the moment, as you referenced before this issue with the bathrooms in North Carolina. Everything trans is, makes drudge and it makes all the news. So do you feel that you're under a microscope even in just your private life with everything that you do?
Yes, and here's the thing. I have been using the women's restroom for 8 years without any issue. Now I'm scared because now people...
that's interesting.
Now people are looking. Now people are scrutinizing. And whenever governors or mayors or whoever it was in North Carolina says women should spray people, if they're scared in the bathroom, and a year ago, a girl with I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, a genetic girl with a vagina, actually got pulled out of a restroom by men. Because
wait, did you say a genetic girl with a vagina? So a female, a regular cisgendered female.
Right.
I hate cisgendered. There's so many words.
She did not perform her femininity well enough.
Got it.
Right. So that's a specific issue, and it always makes me wonder whenever like things like this happen, like what else is going on? Like what are the real issues that are going on right now whenever they put this panic out here? Like, we've been around all this time.
Yeah.
But just for now, for some reason right now we have to talk about this. Like, now we need to have this national discussion. what's the real issue? Like,
Yeah.
what's really happening?
Well,
But
you know what? The news cycle's pretty quick, so I think this one, hopefully we're shifting out of this one.
yeah, it's the process and everything. I'm just like, this is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
So that's more of a specific issue, and this, like, the trans experience is hugely diverse, as diverse as the queer experience. And again, like, who do you define as trans? Because if you go with the Tumblr versions or whatnot, if you cross-dress on Halloween for a Rocky Horror Picture Show, you qualify as trans now. Congratulations. You know? And you can't really say, well, no, you don't qualify if you're in that community, because suddenly you're removing somebody's identity and you're going to get in trouble for that and all that sort of thing. So I'm just kind of like, I need to accept the concept of qualia. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
No.
yeah, qualia is a term. I'm kind of like, I think so much that I'm an armchair philosopher, but qualia was a word that was coined that was to describe the specific experience that we each have. So whenever you look at like a blue wall, you will have a certain range of emotions and feelings and all that. And I will have a supposedly different one. And that is qualia. So we can relate that we're looking at a blue wall, but whatever's invoked inside of us is going to be different. So that's kind of like the trans experience. And that's the best I can do when it comes to rationalizing. You know, it's like, I just know what I feel, and I'm sorry that you can't relate. And again, with the bathroom issue, oh my gosh.
Well, listen.
I appreciate. Oh, go ahead. Well, I mean, like, I appreciate people trying to relate to the trans issues, and like, and whenever they think of the bathroom thing, they're like, why would I go to the bathroom, or why do I think people would go to the bathroom? First thing that comes to mind, well, sexual assault or something, right? And I'm like, well, you should not get in a dress and go into the bathroom then. Like, you're messed up, you know.
Actually, there is one other thing that I wanted to talk about that you mentioned in your submission that I thought was really interesting. You brought up a phrase that I hadn't heard before called constructed illusion, and you related this to having a male and female voice and when you may use each one. Can you tell me about that?
Right. So this is what people call performing gender. So I have developed this voice with years of training. It's still my voice. It's just exercised, right? My arms aren't exercised, but my voice is. So I have a wider range. So with this voice, I get treated different whenever I interact with people because I'm not threatening with this voice. Mm-hmm. But if you're ready for this, if I drop my voice, I suddenly become a threat, right? So I can switch between these two, but that was the voice that's affected by testosterone. And anybody who heard that, I am immediately a different person. There's no going back, right? The illusion is broken. But how do they know that's just not another one of my developed voices? And this is kind of why I call it constructed illusion, because it's related to magic tricks, performance magic. You do misdirection, all that sort of thing. And it is a performance in a sense, but in another sense, it is me. And it's really hard to really unpack that in a short amount of time. But it's intersubjectivity. With my voice, it was for me at first, but eventually I kind of start feeling trapped by it, because even though I've exercised this voice, I'm still not capable of a full range of emotional expression using it, if that makes sense.
Right, but I assume that there's an evolution with that, right? Like you'll get there, so to speak.
Eventually, but it takes a lot of practice. So this goes back into like passing privilege and all that sort of thing. So yeah.
Cool. Well, it was really nice talking to you, and I promise.
It was amazing talking to you. I'm so ecstatic.
All right, I'm on with Jason in Brussels. Jason, how's it going?
Fantastic. Pleasure to be on.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to talk to you. So you are in Brussels, but originally from Cyprus. So we're going to get to Cyprus in a minute, because nobody talks about Cyprus, but it's a really interesting, tiny little country that very few people know about. But you're in Brussels now. Obviously, the last few months in Belgium, but especially in Brussels, have been very tough. So can you just start with that?
Well, yeah, I have to say it hasn't affected people on a conscious level. I mean, you see people going about their daily routine, but it's definitely had a very malicious sort of subconscious undertone. particularly since the Paris attacks, we've had martial law on and off, and it's very concerning when you see 4 armed soldiers outside McDonald's and an armored car outside your workplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been very strange, and the attacks actually happened at a metro station that I used quite frequently.
So when you see these changes, you see more soldiers out there, you see more security and all that kind of stuff. How does that just change your general psyche? Like that you're walking to work and you're seeing this stuff. It changes just sort of the day-to-day, right?
Well, no, you become accustomed to it, actually. But, I mean, it's very disturbing to see the military deployed in a Western capital. I mean, it's like the problems truly have become global in that sense.
So there were a lot of reports after the attacks in Brussels that in parts of the community that one of the attackers was from, and I guess they found him a couple weeks later, that the community there was knowingly hiding him. Were people talking about that in Belgium? It sort of trickled its way into Western media, but not really, and then it was kind of hard to tell what was actually true.
Well, I don't think this is just a problem that's isolated to Belgium. I think in general, we don't see members of the local community where many of these suspects are from turning them in or making a concerted enough effort with the authorities. And it is something that we have to try and deal with through better integration policies.
Yeah. So how is the integration going? I guess to that point, it's probably not going that great.
No, it's terrible. I mean, you have different communities that live parallel lives, I mean, they exist occasionally in the physical space because, I mean, the physical spaces overlap slightly, but they just live in a different reality.
Right. So how much of that, where do you place all the blame on that? Because this is one of the things that a lot of people emailed us about was this idea, especially people in Europe were saying that a lot of the Muslim communities aren't integrating properly. And some people were sort of blaming their own government. Some people were blaming the Muslim communities. My guess is that the truth is somewhere in between. What do you think?
Well, I like to go from more abstractly and say that the problem has been that because of our social justice approach, or rather regressive approach, we've been giving rights to communities rather than to individuals. And it's very arbitrary to define a community in a certain way. And you know, because the premise of our individualist kind of rule of law has been that the rights should be given to individuals and not to, you know, what social justice people, however social justice people decide to classify people as.
Yeah, so how much have those ideas, clearly you're speaking my language, it's about the individual, not the group, let's get away from this oppression Olympics thing, all of that stuff which we've talked about so much here. How much of that ideology has taken hold in Belgium?
Well, I'm more qualified to talk specifically about how this is manifested in the UK, because I've been doing a study on that.
So you've been studying this in the UK about the school system, right?
The school system, yeah, because in the British school system, what you have is you have a third of schools which are regarded as faith schools that receive public money because they have designated a religious character. And what we see here is that I believe that the child's rights are being infringed upon because basically because the child is classified as belonging to a particular community, they get labeled by very arbitrary criteria and attend faith schools just to fulfill the aims of social justice. And I think that this is a very large structural problem.
It's a bizarrely backwards thing that we do in the West. I mean, we do this in America with several religions where the government funds sort of faith-based schools, even though we're a totally secular society.
Well, yes, and you know, shockingly in the UK, the faith schools have an exemption from even the Equality Act. I mean, it's written in the law that they have an exemption from treating people equally in employment and admission. And the problem is, although the schools are obliged to teach the national curriculum, they teach it through a religious lens. So you might learn about many secular subjects, and about other religions and secularism and how to behave in a civic society. But if you also learn that the penalty for apostasy is death, and that the law of God in the Sharia is above the law of the state, then you're less likely to want to integrate and be part of a cohesive society.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that gets to the heart of the social justice stuff, because it seeps into the education system. Then you have a government that is subsidizing basically religious teaching.
It's suicide.
Yeah, all right, so let's move away from that for a little bit, because I do want to talk about Cyprus with you. So nobody knows about Cyprus. It is a tiny little island country. You're from there. Just tell me a little bit about your history. You don't have to give me the whole history of Cyprus, but tell me a little bit about
I'll give you the recent history that's most significant now.
Yeah.
Well, in 1974, the Turkish army occupied half of Cyprus, and the island has been divided since then. The Turkish state installed a kind of fake republic that's only recognized by Turkey and Pakistan. And there have been ongoing attempts to resolve the situation over the decades. But I feel that I'm not very optimistic about the two sides coming to a settlement because of the physical power that Turkey is exerting. I think whether Turkey withdraws or not is mainly a subject of the trajectory of Turkish foreign policy and whether it's in Turkey's interest to leave.
Yeah.
And my hope is that because Turkish foreign policy has become increasingly Islamified and that it's shifting away from the foreign policy of the West, that the West might slowly, and there's a growing relationship between Cyprus and Israel, and my hope is that the West eventually aligns its foreign policy closer to secularist entities throughout the region, like the Kurds, for example, also.
Yeah.
And my hope is that will lead to a better, will give Cyprus leverage in negotiations, because it will have more backing from the West, let's say.
Yeah, well, I promise you that I will talk about it more, because, we've talked about the Kurds here, but as you said, Cyprus is a sovereign nation, a United Nations member country, and it's in full occupation since 1974. So there's a lot, there's a lot more that we could talk about. Unfortunately, we got to move on. I got a long day of interviews, but it's been a pleasure talking to you. All right, I'm on with Jill up in Canada. Jill, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Well, it's good to have you here. Now, first off, before we get into any of the issues you emailed me about, is it true that Canada is going to build a wall to keep Americans out regardless of who wins our presidential election?
I've heard rumors, yes.
Okay, rumors. All right, we're going to get that on the internet. Okay, so you sent me some really interesting stuff that sort of touched on some of the things that we talk about on the show, but then you really went in another direction with it, which is why I wanted to have you on. So one of the things you mentioned is that sort of the mental health anti-stigma campaigns that we see these days are actually part of the regressive left ideology. Now, I gave a lot of buzzwords there, so can you unpack that for me a little bit?
I think so. Not very many people agree with me on that.
Well, let's see.
Well, it's the same sort of victim mentality, except pretty much anyone can be a part of it. It seems almost like a club to be mentally ill these days. And a lot of times it ignores the real issues. Like right now in Canada, we have a huge crisis with First Nations communities. Like lots of youth are committing suicide. But of course, the anti-stigma campaigns want to hijack this and make it about illness. But if you actually talk to these youth, they say, well, we have no hope because there is no hope here. We have no jobs, we have no library, things like that. So I think just the campaigns tend to really get away from the issues and tend to put people, again, in the victim role.
Yeah, so you're sort of talking about two things there. So on one hand, there's the feeling if the economy is not good or their family life isn't good or whatever else it is, sort of a reality in their life, versus these campaigns that in a weird way, because of this oppression Olympics that we've talked about, kind of make it cool to say, well, this is wrong with me, or this is wrong with me, or I have this or that, correct?
Yeah, there seems to be a bit of a hierarchy. Like, it's more cool to be like bipolar than to be depressed, and they seem to be saying, accept me because I'm not like you. Whereas we all know, like, the way towards acceptance is to be, well, we're all human, we're all the same. But they're really going for, no, because I'm different and it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Which also sort of, for people who don't have an illness, what does that mean if they're struggling, that they shouldn't be accepted? So.
Right, that's really kind of fascinating. So someone who doesn't have any known condition, so to speak, in a weird way, then it feels worse for them because they're supposed to feel okay, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of research showing that the more we sort of give people these information about these illnesses, the more we create them in people, because it's very much cultural, and but they just have to get a brain scan and people pay attention because they think that's science.
Yeah. Do you guys have all the crazy commercials that we have in the States? You know, you turn on the TV, especially any of the cable news shows, and all the commercials are for one depression medicine or another. And, you know, there's a cartoon cloud following somebody, and take this medication with this medication. And it makes everybody think that they're depressed or somehow defective.
Yeah, I don't watch TV, but I'm sure we do have those.
You're a wise woman.
Yeah.
So a lot of this, though, from what you wrote to me, is very personal for you because you're a recovering addict yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about that? Either what you were doing, how you got out, etc. You don't have to give me every bit of personal stuff, but
yeah, I was a heroin. I guess I still am a heroin addict. Yeah, I don't know, not much to say about that.
Yeah. And you're in full recovery, or
Yeah.
I guess it's a lifelong struggle, I suppose, right?
Yeah, almost 2 years.
Wow. So the other thing that you wanted to talk about, which of course is related to all this, is the war on drugs. And you know, this is something we talk about a lot in America. I'm not that familiar with the drug situation in Canada in general. Can you tell me a bit?
I probably don't follow politics as much as I should. I get too depressed, but I have read a lot of Bruce Alexander's work. And Vancouver, which is where I'm from originally, has the worst addiction problem in the world, pretty much. So he talks a lot about how globalization has affected that, and the war on drugs pretty much focuses on the drugs themselves as being evil. And it's really not about the drugs. Bruce Alexander's work in the 70s, he pretty much disproved all other notions of addiction, but people have still held on to it. Mm-hmm. Basically, it was called Rat Park. He gave some rats morphine water, and of course they used it up, which is pretty much identical almost to heroin.
Right.
But then he put another group of rats in like a bigger container where they could socialize and they could play, and they had lots of room. And those rats wouldn't drink the morphine water, even when they had already forced them into physical dependency. And that to me is evidence against this whole crazy notion that we should be fighting drugs. Canada isn't probably in the same state as America, but we are certainly getting there.
Yeah. But you guys do have some places, Vancouver, for example, where at least marijuana is legal, right?
It's not legal, I don't think. We do have a safe injection site, but our conservative government, our previous conservative government, tried really hard to get rid of that. But
interesting. Well, listen, it's fascinating to me because you took sort of a theme related to political correctness and this oppression stuff and all that and applied it to something that we haven't talked about that much. So I really appreciate your thoughts on it.